Now we're going to be interviewing Natalie Bauman from Bauman Rare Books in Philadelphia and New York and God only knows where else. And I think, Natalie, a lot of people would like to know what your background is, educational, family-wise, just in general, where you come from and how you got involved in this trade.
Okay. Well, I was born in Philadelphia. In terms of my family, my father was brilliant and a scholar and wide-ranging and had a sense of wonder about everything. And I guess he made learning for me not intimidating and just entirely possible, and that was wonderful. So I came from a home where there was a great deal of erudition reading. I have a master's in literature. I stopped just short of a doctoral thesis because we decided to be cowboys in New Mexico for a while, on cowgirl, I should say. I had a job teaching at the University of Idaho, but I didn't like the town, so I ended up going south and teaching in a Spanish school for a while. And my husband David and I, very young really, we both were alike in that we liked to work for ourselves, and we just liked to travel and read and had a lot of energy, and really didn't know there was a rare book business. I think that might have been intimidating had we known about it. I think our innocence probably propelled us in a way that was fortunate. And we were, people often ask how we had begun, and we had bought an old house, and we went into Freeman's auction in Philadelphia, in which they had basement sales of books, and we were just looking at other things and wandered over to the basement sale. And there was a box of broken volumes, odd volumes of Samuel Johnson, 18th century classics, not really important at all, and for the most part, not complete either. But we realized that no one in that audience had a clue what was being held up. And I just looked at him, and we thought that one couldn't buy 18th century furniture or 18th century paintings. Yet these things were being flung about. And in fact, the quality of those particular books deserved to be flung about, but we didn't know. But we did pick up a first Shakespeare and Company Ulysses for $12 in wrappers, which... And recognizing that almost no one even there knew what it was made us think, there's something here. Let's just investigate it. And it was fun. I mean, we started young. We started early enough so that we could make major mistakes for not so much money. Yeah. And we had the energy, I think, and the confidence to believe if we didn't, if we made a mistake, we'd make it up another way. If we didn't make it, we could do something else. And it's a wonderful life. It's just, we've been very, very successful. We're very fortunate.
Where was your first shop, and when did you open it?
Our first actual shop, we did some things from our home. We did a catalog. We did kind of a grand catalog because we were just kids, and we modeled it on Howell's catalog. And so put everything we had into printing it, and sold the whole thing out in about a minute because we were so grossly underpriced. I think we had the intuition to buy the right books. We didn't have the knowledge or the market at the time to price them, but everything moves you, I think, into what you ultimately do. Our first actual shop was on the second floor in Philadelphia, across from Freeman's auction, ironically. Right, and then we opened one in eventually, we opened one in the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and then a big one on Madison Avenue in New York. We had one in London for a while, and we're thinking about another one now, which I can't really discuss, but we just keep doing it. And it's just great. And a lot of our philosophy has been based on the recognition that there are a lot of people who are very bright, pretty comfortable, and unaware that these things, even now, are available, that these great things are available. And we think that the more public one becomes, the more that market becomes yours, is created. And that's been a large part of... I mean, obviously we have great collectors in universities. Sure. Of course we do. But what's been intriguing and fun for us is to bring people who are new to it and tremendously excited by it and bright enough and interested enough to become great collectors.
When you were first starting in the trade, you and David, were there any people who were very influential or mentors or people that you learned from or looked up to as people you'd like to emulate perhaps someday?
I don't know about living. I read the biographies of Rosenbach. We now live across from his house. I don't know if I'd want to emulate him, but it was intriguing to me. We weren't weren't really that near people, so we were a little bit more isolated. So I guess we did a lot of it more by reading and getting catalogs and immersing ourselves. For us, it worked. I mean, for us, it was a valuable way to do it. There were a lot of people, obviously, whom I respected and whose whose businesses we've looked, but we didn't really model our business after them. Our business was something different.
Right, it was modeled after what you wanted.
Yes.
Now,
and it evolved.
With the internet coming in at a certain point in your careers, how did the internet affect your business when it first started?
It's kind of interesting. Barnes & Noble actually approached us in the very beginning and wanted an association. They weren't quite sure in what form, and that was one of the ways that we had investigated it. I think we hear the same thing from every bookseller. It's a very interesting component. It's a very, very dangerous one for innocent buyers, and most are. We certainly, I think, if you really know what you're doing, you can buy, sell. We sell a fair amount. I mean, certainly not the main part of our trade, because we're a very retail company. And the major books, certainly, I don't know why someone would buy a $100,000 book from an unknown person on the web or something. I've never understood that. But we've sold some surprisingly good and expensive books. I think we have, what do they call it, bricks and mortar. I think you have a name, you have a reputation, you have a solid address, and people feel more comfortable and should.
Was it much of a transition for you from going from not being having an internet to becoming an internet part of your business? Were you computer literate at the time?
No, but we have a lot of we have a pretty big staff.
Okay,
and a lot of people were. Now we have a full-time web. The phrase is, we have a full-time webmaster. We have a full-time computer person. We have a web designer. So we've done a lot to really create a good site, and we've done a lot with it. It's very interesting. I think I'm from the generation before it was coming to me at birth. So I think my sensibility is different.
Yeah. What percentage of your business comes from the internet?
I'm not sure.
Just sort of like a general figure.
I think I'd give you a figure, and it would be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not sure.
I'm not sure.
So it's not an influential part of your business.
It's a good part of it, but it's not by any means the major part of it. No. But it's good. I mean, I'm sure there's substantial income from it, but in terms of what percentage, I'm not really sure. I think my husband could answer that.
Do you do a fair amount of buying on the internet, or?
Yes, we buy on the internet. We have to send a lot back.
Well, you have to send a lot back. Again,
that's why I'm saying it really is buyer beware, and I think for a buyer who's not knowledgeable and not bibliographically equipped, really, I think it's a dangerous game. Or unless, of course, you're buying from reputable people, that's another animal.
That's another issue.
That's entirely another issue. But yes, I mean, there are bargains out there, and there are problems out there.
Well, I think from what I've been hearing from people we've been talking to, there seems to be more problems than there are bargains.
They're very serious problems.
There'll be graphical deficiencies, a lack of description, transferring of bad information.
Also, I heard an interview a long time ago in which the man being interviewed mentioned this, and it's very true. If you were to go and to buy something for 5 or 10, significant 5, 10, 20,000, whatever it is, on the net, and a guarantee is absolutely pointless if the person to whom you sent the money has spent it. You have no idea whether it's still there. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, if you don't stay with someone reputable, and much of what we buy really is from people whom we already know.
You do a fair amount of buying at book fairs.
We do a great deal of buying at book fairs.
As I always see you walking around with your minions.
We do, with our minions, yes, our gorillas, yeah.
Right, the girls.
So they should be in camouflage, and we just let them loose. We're lucky. We have a very good staff, and they're very knowledgeable.
Yeah, they are really nice people to do business with too. One of the things that people always want to ask is, if you were going to go into the book business today, in this day, how would it be sensible to do it? Is it?
I hope that people do. I hope that people do, because what I was saying earlier about having started when it was inexpensive enough that one could be young and do it. I mean, it always was risky, but I don't think you go into a business like this unless you can handle a certain amount of risk. My mother used to say she wouldn't have slept a night in her life if she'd done what I do. And I sleep very well.
I sleep pretty good myself.
I think it's a great business and it's fun. And I think the internet has possibilities, that eliminate for some people the need for a store, bricks, mortar, all that expense. But it's an expensive game now. I think I'd love to see people in it. I hope they do. I think it's a great business. And for us, as I said, it's been a very successful one.
Well, what do you see? The trend of late has been open bookstores have been closing, and closing at a tragic number.
Tragic. I'm very sorry about it.
Do you see the possibility of
we keep
changing?
Opening them, however? So.
Well, yeah.
I don't. I mean, I think it's a diminution, really, and I think for those of us who love to browse, and I think most book buyers love to browse.
Absolutely.
I think it's tragic, and also they were not only venues through which things could be sold; they were places that people could bring things to sell. This is going to become more and more difficult. I mean, every book in the world isn't $5,000. There are wonderful first editions for $2,000 and $3,000, and this is really where many people start and where many booksellers start. And even I think booksellers who have been in it for quite a while should maintain enough of a stock of reasonably priced books so that prospective buyers aren't priced out of it from day one. I think that would be a mistake too. I don't know. I think it's sad. I hope it doesn't continue.
I don't see it changing its direction right now with the way the economy is.
No, but I think the isolation of not having a shop will render people. I don't think booksellers are as good often if they don't have real physical interaction with people. How do you anticipate a question? We read silences, we read faces, we understand clients. That's gone if you don't have a shop and if you don't learn through having a shop. So I think it's tragic all the way around, and I hope people open them or keep them open. And it's exciting. It's fun. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit in a room somewhere and that's my business. I wouldn't want to do it.
No, it's very bad for most of us who like to go to shops.
Yeah.
The one example I often cite is that 3 years ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, there were 5 open bookshops. Now there are none. And if that's going to be the trend, where are we heading?
I don't know. Although I think the market is growing and the energy is growing, the clients are growing. I mean, that's the irony of the whole thing. When we opened ground floor on Madison Avenue about 7 years ago, and it was a huge risk because you never know if you're about to throw a party to which no one's going to come or not enough people. And it was and we built it out. It was the first antiquarian bookstore to open on the street level in Manhattan in 2 decades, in over 20 years.
Wow.
25 years, nobody. And it's the center of the world. I mean, for a lot of people, it's the center of the book world. It's the center of the financial world, the moneyed world, the educated world. And it was very, very successful for us, but we didn't know. But 25 years that no one would have taken that gamble,
it's kind of hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to believe.
In a city as...
In a city as ready as this one.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I mean, the days of 4th Avenue are over.
Right.
And they probably will never come back. Right. But how is, just in general terms, how is the Madison Avenue?
Terrific.
It's worked out very well for you.
Terrific. It's been terrific.
Yeah. I've not been in it, but I sort of walked by.
Oh, go on. Well, we try to make it friendly, and people have always said, who have just walked in, have always said they're treated well. There's no, it's an open shop. People can look at things and touch them and browse.
Do you still have a presence at the Waldorf?
No, we gave that up. We stayed there we were there for about 13 years, and it was wonderful. It was a small shop. It was a boutique shop.
Yeah.
And we really stayed on for quite a while because the Waldorf did not want us to leave. I think they enjoyed our presence there. We suited one another, really. And but Madison Avenue was 5 blocks away. Yeah. So what happened is all our clients went there. It was 10 times bigger.
Oh, yeah.
And basically it was just attrition. It wasn't that it wasn't good for us. It was very good for us.
It was.
So, yeah.
Your perspective is perhaps a little bit different than other people. You have at least 2 open shops. You do all the major book fairs and some of the minor book fairs as
Right.
well, and you turn up everywhere. Do you see this as the trend for people who want to do what you want to do?
I think people have to choose their models in accordance to their natures. I mean, if one has a nature, David and my husband and I both travel. We have a lot of energy. We never looked at a day as a 5-day week. We never looked at a day as an 8-hour a week as a 5. We never looked at a day as an 8-hour day. We just did it because we loved it, you know. And I think you've got to have that. And for people who have a sense of adventure, don't mind terribly taking a risk, love to read, love to talk. It's just a great life. But I really do think it depends on one's nature. I think there are a lot of models to follow. There's some great booksellers, obviously, who have done it, you know, differently from us. And I've loved it. I think it's a little harder now. I think it would take a lot more money to follow our model.
Do you think that there was a period of time in the last few years where the regional book fairs seemed to be dropping down and losing momentum?
Right.
Now they seem to be picking it back up.
I hope so.
Have you noticed that in some of the fairs that you've been doing? Not the major. I'm talking about
The little ones?
the regional book fairs.
Yeah, I mean, they seem pretty vigorous. Maybe it's because the clients who no longer have local bookshops have to go to the regional book fairs. And it's a great learning. I'll never stop. I'll never stop visiting them because they're really diamonds. I mean, one never knows.
You never know what you're going to find.
I find that in the big fairs. I find the major fairs where I think a lot of the public would assume that everything is at its top price, you know, that the books have been, you know, much examined or much. I think there are finds everywhere. I've never been to a major book fair that there haven't been finds for me.
I hear people say to me, well, if you're not there to set up, all the good things are gone.
I bought 10 books today.
Okay, and today is essentially the third
I bought
day of the book fair?
10 books today, and I was thrilled to find them.
So you don't share that opinion, obviously.
I don't share. Look, I love to buy during setup, and I buy heavily, but I don't stop once it starts.
Right.
There are thousands and thousands of books here. You know?
I mean, how can you see them all just in a short period of time?
Right.
But there are some people who are discouraged because they feel that anything that's worth a damn has already been taken by a bookseller.
I find that very silly. I mean, we have, for instance, if one were to go into our exhibit right now, we have great books there. We have great books there. They're there. If they didn't sell in the first 5 hours, they're not great books. Is Leaves of Grass not a great book because somebody didn't?
Right. I agree.
And you know, I actually, a dealer, a friend of mine, close friend of mine, said the other day, well, you know, one's inventory is basically what one couldn't sell. And I said, that's ridiculous. They're just the books that the right people haven't recognized.
That's more my thinking as well.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see as a person who's been around, who's worked in the trade for a while? What do you see as some of the major challenges facing our trade as we go forward?
I think one of the big ones is the internet and the wrong books. That it worries me that there are books now in collections which are not right, and I think those buyers, those collectors could get so disappointed when they discover that they'll lose their trust in everything, or they'll lose their taste, because I think one of the obvious factors in book buying is that you don't need to do it. No one needs to do this. I mean, this has to be a love, a delight, a pleasure, whatever it is. And I think when people feel cheated or hurt or lose an element of trust, the joy goes out of it and the collector is lost. And I think that's going to be a big problem. And the other is having the bookshops close.
I think that to me is a major disappointment because I like to go scouting.
Me too. It's a hunt. It's a treasure hunt. It's fun.
Every day is a treasure hunt,
absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. You know, those of us who have been around a long time, I don't know what they told you. When I first started in the business, they said to me, oh, it's too bad you didn't start 15 years ago when there were a lot of books.
Right.
Now you won't find anything. And it seems like every generation is...
Walk through this show.
It's tremendous.
There are treasures out there, treasures. And, you know, when people say to us, well, how can you keep expanding? I mean, how are you going to maintain the inventory? It really hasn't been a problem. It's true that prices go up. It's true that we have to pay more, a lot of things like that. But there are great books in the world, and most of them have been recognized. Most collections have stayed intact, or the books have been, hopefully, preserved. And they just circulate. They just come back. So I wouldn't worry about it.
How do you feel about buying at auction? Are you an auction buyer?
I would rather not. I'm certainly an auction buyer. I have to be. I mean, if you want and need the great books in the world, you have to buy them everywhere you can get them. I prefer private collections. We get a lot of them. We get more and more because we've been doing it for 34 years, and things do come back to you, which is wonderful.
34 years. It
34,
doesn't seem that long, does it?
35 now. We used to tell jokes. I think they're a necessary part of the business, and we will. They're going to stay, and we're going to buy.
Do you have any presence on eBay?
I've never done eBay. I also don't give books to auctions, but I may be one of the only dealers alive who doesn't do that. But
really?
I don't do that. Not because of any stance. I just don't do it.
I frankly don't have the time to energy to spend in that venue. I'd rather spend it someplace else. I feel it'd be more profitable. But that doesn't mean everybody has their own way.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I guess I feel that the books that I've chosen are worthy of having been chosen. I'll sell them myself.
Another thing that seems to be perturbing a lot of dealers is the dust jackets on modern first editions. Somebody was telling me that there is a place that reproduces these modern first editions and the dust jackets so that they look, just...
Wait, I'll turn that off. Sorry. This is one of those. I forgot. I'm sorry.
That's okay. As I was saying, Natalie...
make sure it's off. Yeah.
That seems to be a major problem, the first edition dealers having these books, and people are telling me that the dust jackets are sometimes taken from the reprint and put onto the original, and the poor buyer
that's
just
horrible.
doesn't know.
It's absolutely horrible. I mean, it's unethical.
Absolutely,
I think if anybody did that in the ABAA, he'd be out or should be. One of the main problems with those, I think they're too new and too shiny, and right now we can see them. What worries me is in 20 years, when they've aged naturally. I think some of those, though, are now... Wasn't some regulation passed or something where there's some indication...
Supposedly, they're supposed to put something on now that says that it's a reproduction. But I was mainly referring to the 3 or 4 years previous to this, where there was all these wonderful copies were coming out with beautiful dust jackets, and there were some poor, unsuspecting people who were buying them.
People should buy their books from people who are knowledgeable because at least we know, and they're not going to appear in our inventories.
It just seems like it's a problem.
It's a problem.
And you do a fair amount of business in modern first editions.
Sure.
You're across
we go
the
from
board.
the 15th century to
from the 15th
modern.
century up. Yeah. Do you do much foreign buying? Are you mainly an American dealer?
Well, we're primarily American sellers. We certainly have international clients. I buy lots in London. I do buy in Paris, partially because I just love to go to Paris.
Well, that's a different
and the
story.
photo books and the art books. There are areas of books which are more likely to be found in Paris. I don't do a lot in the rest of the continent, although I buy great continental books.
Yeah. You always have a fabulous inventory, so it requires, refreshing every now and then.
All the time.
We've got a few more minutes here. I'm just curious. I ask everybody the same question. Where do you see our trade going? Do you see us, if you had a crystal ball and you looked into it, and where do you see us in 50 years or 100 years? Will we have a
You and I? I don't want to say it.
We'll be dead, but maybe not. Some of us are going to live forever.
I don't know if I want to see us in 50 years if we're not dead.
Do you think we still have a viable entity that we can call the antiquarian book trade?
I really think so, because it's been going since ancient Rome. I mean, I don't see why it would necessarily stop in the 21st century.
Well,
its viability, I think it may change its face.
Yeah. It won't be the same as we remember the 60s and 70s.
But that's all right. I mean, we're not the same as Rosenbach when he was dealing with 5 major clients and basically dominating the world market. I think it's a bigger market and a growing trade, absent the things that we've discussed. But it's fun, and I think that's one of the reasons it'll exist.
So you foresee booksellers continuing to come into the trade and become book men or book women?
I would think.
And your major, are you major with privates, or do you do a library business?
Vast bulk of ours is private.
It's all private.
No, I mean we certainly do.
Yeah, but
the vast bulk of ours is private.
And you see that particular market as an expanding one rather than a contracting one?
Oh, I think the growth has been extraordinary. I mean, that I've seen it in our business, it's just extraordinary.
I hear from booksellers that it used to be that people wanted to buy books because of the great text, et cetera, that they had, and that this generation is a more visually oriented generation. They like prints, they like color plate books. How do you feel that same way? Or?
No, I really find it mixed. I mean, this is a little off track, but sometimes people will ask, what's surprising about it. And I think one of the things that I've enjoyed about it, the trade, is that people whom you would not necessarily expect to be highly scholarly because their fields are not, academic necessarily, are incredibly well read. I mean, they're not just looking for picture books. It's amazing to me who buys Newton's Principia or who buys. It always surprises me, and it's a welcome surprise. I don't think so. I think people will.
So you foresee a future?
I foresee a future. But that's a bit of a Pollyanna anyway.
Okay.